everyone. It's Thursday, January 26, 2017, and it's time to go to work on music. Definitely dealing with some sad stuff today. Not sure how much of the detail I want to get into, but some moments in life are just sad, and you want things to go a certain way, and they don't. And There's always difficult choices to make after that. Or I guess I should say there's usually difficult choices to make after that. And I'm just sad, just really sad. But I'll put it into the music, and that's really what this is all about at the end of the day. I'm going to try to get to work here, sort of contemplate what's happening a little bit more, and just sink it into the grind, basically. Not in a way where I feel like I'm avoiding the feelings, but in a way where I feel like I'm moving the feelings ahead with me. So, gonna do some online classwork, gonna do some book work, gonna do drum practice. I did order a new bass pedal for this setup because I didn't realize it was pre-set up for double bass, which is really nice. And I thought that I'd be able to use the hi-hat controller for double bass, which technically I can, but as far as I can see, it's going to be really, really difficult if I want to play a double bass part and then also have a hi-hat part without switching the kit, and that's going to be a little bit annoying. So I just went ahead, I've been thinking about it for a while, I just went ahead and bought another bass pedal, and hopefully that's going to work out well. So I may set that up, we'll see how I'm doing on time, and then my big goal is try to spend at least an hour getting into some original material. That's been a real struggle recently. But I think I'm just going to go for it, dive back in and re-listen back to some of the tracks I was working on late last year, try to get some good versions of those done, and it's just hard, man. It's just hard. It's work, but I think thinking about doing it is the hard part. Actually doing it is really not that bad. So just try to remind myself of that, and let's do this. Here we go. All right. Definitely some interesting ideas there from the music technology class. Um, the instructor is just talking about different ways that we represent sound digitally, which I have a little bit of knowledge about, and I think it's really, really interesting and perhaps painfully, obviously, very, very relevant to the modern day. And he's just talking about how analog sounds are like a continuous thing, whereas digital sounds are really not continuous. They're discrete. You're just capturing these tiny little snapshots of a continuous function and just approximating it, basically, um, which is really interesting. So he's just talking about some of the particulars of that, like bit depth and sample rate and channels and that stuff. It's the basics. I've been talking about this so much as I talk about the class. It's like understanding those fundamentals changes the way you see everything, because that's the foundation of it all. So super fascinating, super cool class. Would really recommend it. Again, it's free on Coursera. Check it out. And then reading more of the Beinhorn blog. I mean, he's so great and so passionate about his point of view, which is really cool. I think that's a lot of what great artistry is about, is really being honest about your own perspective. But it really still seems, after reading this post, he's talking about the difference between good and great. It just seems really subjective, man. I mean, maybe it isn't. Maybe I'm just not connecting with exactly what he's talking about, which is possible. But at the same time, I think to make the claim that there's been no great music in the last 10 years, I mean, sadly, I don't know that I disagree, but but at the same time, I can think of a few examples of people who are doing really great stuff, and I just I think his argument could have more weight if it were fleshed out in a different way, but at the same time, I see his perspective, and I think it's just I think you're just either going to agree or disagree. Like it's not necessarily a factual thing, and it really got me thinking about how we evaluate music and how there's really no standard for that. You know, it's too subjective to be like, oh, this music is a 10 and this music is a 9. You know, if we were going to pick some scale, it would end up just being arbitrary at the end of the day. So some people like stuff that's really complicated, some people like stuff that's really simple, some people like stuff with a lot of emotion, some people like stuff that's more cerebral and more technical. Um, and the great popular music, you know, for every person that really loves Bob Dylan, there's probably, I don't know, at least one person, maybe not a whole person, but maybe like point 0.2 people who are like, yeah, I can't stand Bob Dylan, you know, it's or they just it doesn't connect. And he sort of, you know, reveals his own bias in the article by talking about people of his generation and how they focused on music so much, and there was two reasons for that. Number one, there were way fewer other distractions, forms of entertainment like the internet and video games and a billion television channels and stuff, cell phones, iPhones, you know. But at the same time, like there was also an industry and a flow of talent and inspiration that just was, you know, insane. You think about the Hendrixes and the Who and the Zeppelins and the Cream, you know, and I mean, just an insane explosion. The Beatles of crazy good music, and you know the cultural forces at that time. Who knows? You know, who can really explain why and how that happened? I mean, if someone can, please enlighten us. But I think to try to transpose that to today, it's like we're just living in a different society. I think music, the way people see music has changed a little bit, and at the same time, it hasn't. I was on a plane flying from San Diego to San Francisco a few weeks back, and there was like a kids basketball team, and these guys were so excited about these songs they were sharing with each other, and they were really getting into it, and it was really cool. And I just remember thinking like, wow, you know, it's the excitement of discovering new songs is still alive. Now, I don't know that that totally contradicts Michael Beinhorn's point, which is like, yeah, there's good music being made all the time, but there isn't anything that's like searing your soul. It's so great. And, you know, I think I think we should push ourselves to that level, guys. I think his overall point in the article is we should be comparing modern bands to bands like Led Zeppelin, not just necessarily the music and or the production values, but the emotional content, the feeling, the impact that the song has. And I think it's great to set the standards that high. I think it's possibly dangerous, because our perception of ourselves can be very limited, and people don't always. I don't know. It's easy to throw out a lot of stuff that you might be making that's good because it's not Led Zeppelin good. But maybe that's his point. Maybe his point is like we should just throw out all the good stuff and just only try to go for the great stuff. And it's a really interesting idea. I'm gonna really let that simmer and think about, you know, what does it take to really go to that place in yourself where you're really killing it. You know, you're really getting that greatness to shine. So, yeah, thanks, Michael Bonhorn, just for planting that seed, and hopefully it grows into something really great. I'm certainly trying. Maybe I'm not trying enough. I don't know. If anyone sees this and you have thoughts on that, please let me know. You know, comment, um, give your perspective. I mean, you know, I've said this before, but a lot of the reason I'm putting this stuff out publicly is like, I want a conversation, you know. I don't just want to be like, hey, here's what I think, and you listen, you know. It's like, hey, you know, here's what's on my mind, and I haven't quite gotten 1,000% clarity on that, you know. So, just interesting, really, really interesting ideas, and yeah, I'll come back to them tomorrow. But for now, let's hit some drums. Alright, pretty good drum practice. I set up this double bass pedal setup, and I'm feeling like maybe it's just a little much for right now. I might back it off for a while. Um, Bit of a disappointment there. So I was kind of excited about it, but we'll see. I'll sleep on it and come back tomorrow. I'm not going to mess with it now. But man, today just just emotionally, I think is not the day to feel awesome about this stuff. But that's okay. You know, I'm still doing it, still grinding it, and that's what's important. So yeah, that's gonna be something. I don't know. I think what I liked about this setup was sort of the minimalism of it, and you know, maybe there's a place for the double bass setup in the future, but maybe just not now. Definitely feeling bad that I bought it now, but you know, happens. I'll handle it. So I'll fix that tomorrow. Otherwise, it was a good drum session. I just listened back to some of the tracks I was working on at the end of last year, and you know, I think I'm just in a emotional context where it's hard to feel good about that stuff. So I'm kind of hating on it right now, and within myself, which is just how it goes, guys. It's just how it goes, man. And you know, really, sort of the mode I was in the last couple years is like whether I think it's good or bad or not is sort of irrelevant, and I need to just spend time finishing things and just getting them done and letting other people evaluate it. But it's hard to do that, you know. It's hard to feel like, oh, maybe I'm going to put something out that I don't believe in or that I don't think is all that great. And you know, I'm kind of feeling like sometimes I feel like, okay, I put in my time, I gave it a good shot, and it didn't pan out. You know, I'm not where I want to be. It's going to take a crazy more amount of work for me to, you know, achieve this vision of being the musician I want to be, and maybe there's a place for that in my life, but maybe it's not going to be like, you know, the thing that I do. And that's really hard. I don't know if that's true or not. It's kind of a difficult thing to think about, and is just painful in both respects. Like, whether I keep going seems really hard, whether I give up seems hard. And I think it's really easy to get caught in this sort of mental, I don't know, just constant second guessing and noodling around mentally. And at the end of the day, I think what creates results is you get in there and you just knock stuff out, and that's how you get better. So it's okay that I'm not exactly where I want to be with this stuff. It's okay if this EP isn't the EP that I want it to be. But there's still value in getting it done and seeing it through artistically, and it is a snapshot of my development, and maybe I won't put it out, or maybe I'll just release it, like I said earlier, under a different moniker or something like that, and just see what happens with it, treat it like a little experiment. And then what I'd really like to do is maybe get into to making some stuff that just is sort of a different vibe, a different sound, kind of start from scratch with a new vision and see if I can make that happen. I don't know, guys. I really don't know. Today is kind of a tough day, but I don't want to keep just complaining about it. So I'm going to try to make some headway here in the next 10 minutes. Then I'm going to end the session. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts on what I'm discussing and thinking about today. And overall, it's good to be back in the musical groove, and I'm looking forward to just getting some clarity on this one way or the other. And I'm not attached to the outcome. I just want to see it through the right way. So I appreciate you guys. Hope you guys are out there grinding towards your goals, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.